Hello and good morning. I'm Leonardo McClarty, President of the Howard County Chamber, and I'd like to welcome each of you to Policy Matters. And actually, I know we've got a little bit of feedback this morning. We'll see if we can work on. But in the duration of time, we apologize for being just a little bit behind schedule this morning, but certainly thank all of you for joining us this morning. We're excited to have with us Delegate Terri Hill, who will be sharing her insights on the General Assembly session for this year. And so for those of you that don't know Delegate Hill, I'm just going to give a very brief introduction of her. And so she was elected to the Maryland House of Delegates in 2014 and has been a member of the House since 2015. She currently serves on the Health and Government Operations Committee, which ultimately considers legislation related to health facilities, equipment and products, health insurance, health occupations and professions, public health, including Medicaid and long-term care. This committee also is concerned with laws relating to estates and trust, human relations, procurement, and state government organization, procedures, and operations. Also, many of you that are in Howard County would know that Delegate Hill, while not born in Howard County, I think pretty much could say she grew up in Howard County, having graduated from Wild Lake Senior High School and went on to Harvard and Columbia, where she is now an MD. And perhaps a little known fact to you that I didn't know until looking at some things is that I knew about the medical side of things with Delegate Hill, but didn't know that also she has a degree in bioelectric engineering. And so I think that moves her from being extremely smart to being brilliant. But we certainly thank her for joining us this morning. And so before we dig into things and allow Delegate Hill to bring a few remarks, I want to turn things over to my partner here and Josh Bokee from Comcast. And Josh, any comments you have for us this morning? Actually, you're muted, Josh.
Let's try that again. Good morning, Leonardo, and good morning, Delegate Hill. No, just on behalf of Comcast, it's great to be here. And I think throughout the entire pandemic, our mission has been to keep our community and customers connected throughout. And it's one of the great things about this forum here this morning is that we're connecting residents with Delegate Hill and having a great discussion while we're at it. So, Leonardo, looking forward to this morning.
Thank you. And so, Delegate Hill, certainly are happy to have you with us this morning. And so, if you would share with us a little bit about some of the things that you're focused on this General Assembly session.
I'm just left. First of all, Leo and Josh, it's good to be here. Sorry to be running late. And as I explained, I'm going to be moving shortly because I'm trying to get actually to my office. I have to see some patients in about 45 minutes. So I'll be moving and talking. Hopefully that won't affect our connection. So I'm working on a range of issues, obviously, with the rest of the General Assembly. We had some priorities for dealing with the ongoing effects of the pandemic and anticipated short and long-term impacts on our residents, our businesses, and our communities. We came in with these for overriding many of the governor's vetoes. And so in the first part of the session, I had two items that were vetoed last year that one we successfully overrid, and the other one we were able to get some negotiations taken care of so that we didn't need that. And basically one had to do with funding for a program that I had created in legislation 2 years ago to give a grant money in the Department of Aging, or to at least create a grant in the Department of Aging for not-for-profits in the community that help people age in place. And so last year we passed legislation to put $100,000 in there, and that was vetoed. And of course, during the pandemic, the importance of not-for-profits that work in the community, particularly with aging and elderly people, was really critical. So I'm pleased that we overrode that veto, and we can at least start getting some money to help our not-for-profits, in addition to what we're doing with and what the federal government's doing with the pandemic. The other item, some of our folks here in Howard County pretty significantly, we had passed legislation to do a study on the health effects of noise coming from the next gen traffic patterns that are now being used at BWI Airport. The county, along with Anne Arundel County, Baltimore County, working for the past several years with the BWI Roundtable, trying to get some changes in the flight patterns that were adjusted some, I guess now 6 or 7 years ago. And there are some real issues with that and some real concerns in our communities around the airport that are now being impacted by airport noise. And Senator Clarence Lamb and I, who had gotten the legislation passed for the study, and it was vetoed, were able to work with the Department of Transportation during the interim to get them to study the issue and put money into it despite the governor's veto. So that was the other bill. Otherwise, I've been working on a variety of issues, including some legislation that came out of Attorney General Brian Frosch's Access to Justice COVID-19 task force. So we have bills that are designed to help residents, particularly residents who are normally the marginalized communities, deal with long-term health planning and death issues. Things like making it easier for their families to help them apply for Medicaid when they can't. We've seen a lot of problems with people, particularly as illnesses and COVID and social distancing, that folks who needed assistance with many things could not get it. We've been working with some transfer death deed work group issues and things of that nature. So I have bills like that. I have a couple of bills which I think of as sort of prison reform kinds of things related to the fact that our inmates who are supposed to be training so that when they are released back to our communities, they can be have a higher likelihood of becoming successful, tax-paying, contributing members of our society. They do work while they're in prison, but they're paid as little as 17 cents an hour. So one of the pieces of legislation I've introduced is to pay them a wage. And I actually asked for a minimum wage, and we get obviously a lot of pushback from that. But the wage is really designed so that they can contribute while in prison to their families and to pay child support, to pay restitution to victims, to save some money so that when they're released back, they're not living in abject poverty and more likely to go back to life of crime. It's designed to work to have the department work better with trade organizations who are actually anxious to teach certain skills. And so I really do think that we can do better than peonage menial labor, and that we really ought to be treating our correction system like we say it's supposed to be designed to help people rehabilitate so they can do better in the future. So there's a lot of room for negotiation there. We're having a lot of discussions with the Department of Corrections and some others. Also have a prison-related bill that has to do with making sure that there are plant-based food options. It's a health issue. We pay for the cost of healthcare in our people who are imprisoned, and that healthcare goes up because there are high incidents of diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, and other things that really can be, there's evidence can be deeply if folks were actually eating healthier meals. And one of the problems in the prisons is that there's no real incentive to create healthy meals because our correction facilities are allowed to have vendors come in and they get a commission off of the food that the vendors sell. So the less prisoners eat of the standard food that's prepared, the more potential profit there is as they spend money. And if we get back to the fact that if they're not earning money, yet they're working, or they're earning between 17 and 30 cents an hour for the labor they're putting in, that means that we're also requiring their families to provide money for them to buy the things that they need, which again impacts communities because families get caught up in the financial cost of supporting prisoners. So $30 for a phone call, somebody's got to pay for that. And so I think there's some sentiment that they're criminals and therefore they shouldn't be paid. We know those are vestiges of slave labor. But that's been the rationale. But the reality is that this is part of the reason that we're cycling back into higher and higher rates of recidivism, and that we're keeping families in poverty because of a criminal justice system that was never designed for rehabilitation. It was just designed to create an alternative source. I mean, also for some, change of behavior and some punishment, and that's all well and good, but it really isn't working for our benefit as a community because we're not doing better by our communities and by our prisoners, and that's not helping us in the long run.
Certainly a lot taking place in your respective committees. And I think as we see with a lot of the issues that we talk about here, the complexities that and all of the different moving parts that unless you're actually there, front line and center, you don't see all of the different nuances and so forth. And so certainly I think we all thank you for what you're doing. And for those also that may not know, and with Delegate Hill's also interest in BWI as well, I didn't mention this, that while certainly she covers Howard County, she's also representing I guess if it's the eastern part of Howard County, it's going to be the western part of Baltimore County. And so she covers around the BWI area as well. And so all of this certainly is connected into her district, which would also be another reason for her interest there. And
so, Leo, if I may, I would also mention there are a couple of other kinds of bills. So, I know a lot of my colleagues, they really focus in really narrow areas, and people have sort of coached me that I should, focus, like a laser on one or two areas. And it's been 7 years. It's hard for me to do that because there are so many issues across the board. But I also have a bill that may be of particular interest to some of your members. We recognize that algorithms generated or pencil and paper are used all the time. And every year we see more and more bills where we're trying to correct for social injustices, economic injustices, because we had algorithms that were being used that reinforced biases in the system that were already there. And there's a lot of work being done and research being done about how, well-meaning efforts to, screen employment. If the people who are writing the algorithms aren't aware of it, if it's not diverse enough, they will simply reinforce the same biases that are already in place. And so I'm introducing legislation to require the state to, first of all, determine whether an algorithm has to be used if we're planning on using it for any of a variety of different applications. Then if it has to be used, to vet it for any inherent biases and to sort of disclose if there are biases present, and to allow for the algorithm to be used if it's the best way of achieving the goal, and if the bias that is present is consistent with the goal of the program. So, but if the bias that is disclosed is not consistent, then the algorithm should not be used. And this is sort of, trying to be more proactive instead of trying to fix things after the fact, really trying to find a way to stop undesired outcomes from occurring up front. The challenge, of course, is that it's really hard to determine what the mechanisms are for vetting those things. So we've been, getting some feedback from the Tech Council. I've been working with folks at UMBC, trying to figure out the best way to sort of wrap ourselves around this issue. And if there are any of your members who have anything that they'd like to offer or add, I'd be very interesting. I suspect that this bill will not be passed. I think it's a little bit too fresh, and there's not enough operational, there's not clear operationality. It's very hard to figure out how to implement this with the tools that are available today. But it may be that what we can get out of this is and I've talked to, again, UMBC about this, is actually create a center for looking at responsible AI so that Maryland can be a leader in doing right by how we use data going forward. So I think that's kind of an interesting.
And is this bill, I was looking at the bills that you've been involved in this session, is this House Bill 1323?
So you're asking about the number when I've got 20 some bills. Thank you very much.
Because it said you mentioned algorithm, and it said algorithm decision systems, procurement, and discriminatory acts.
Yes, that would be it.
All right, because I'm going to share it with folks to take a look at. But that is interesting, and certainly one way in which I think now we can utilize the technology that we have to really look at procurement and spending in a much different way than we've done before. And I think this also speaks to those that may not be as familiar with your particular committee. And honestly, I think we can see how health and government operations tie into the healthcare discussion and so forth. But for those that don't know, when we talk about state procurement, when we talk about some of the different state agencies, that's also coming through this committee as well. And as a matter of fact, that was going to be a good segue into a couple of bills that I was noticing coming through your area, particularly as it relates to small business. I know that there's one, I think, that's maybe coming up this week that's actually dealing with kind of creating a department of small business, entrepreneurship, and innovation that would be kind of within the governor's office. And don't know if you've had an opportunity to take a look at it yet, but just curious as to maybe your thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a great idea. I have not looked at the bill in detail. I generally will look at the bill, the fiscal note, and all the testimony as we're hearing the bill. And so, as you said, that bill will be before us this week, and that's when we'll really, focus on, or at least when I'll focus on what it has. And then the bill will come to subcommittee, and it is likely to come to government operations, which is one of the two subcommittees that I serve on. And so we'll have an opportunity then to really look at it in detail and pass it through, improve upon it, amend it, or decide that maybe it's not quite ready for prime time.
And just quickly for those, part of this bill would actually create within the governor's current office of small business, small business, minority affairs, and I think women-owned, this division of small business entrepreneurship and innovation, ultimately to be able to provide really a lot, I guess as the bill sponsors would say, more direct assistance to small businesses and so forth. Currently, this work is being done out of Commerce. And so certainly the chamber, this isn't one we've taken a position on, but we certainly will be watching it and following it and so forth.
What I'd like to do now is I'm going to keep talking with you, if that's okay, and turn my camera off.
Okay.
Moving around.
And understood that I know that particularly for folks like yourself and Senator Lamb, that on days when session either starts late or it's not in session, you guys have patience to see, and it's truly a true juggling act between service of your patients and service to the communities. Josh, anything you want to add or add a question on?
Well, Delegate Hill, first, thank you. And, it's interesting that in the bills that you have been speaking about a little bit this morning about the systemic approach that you really seem to be taking on these issues. And, I was going to ask that, given that you are a small business owner, that you are a practicing MD in the medical field, how has that shaped your approach in terms of, looking at different issues and looking at different bills? It certainly seems to perhaps have influenced, how you take, again, a more systemic approach, but just more broadly, how do you think that's influenced, how you approach your work in the General Assembly?
Well, I think, Josh, thanks for that. I think that perhaps it allows me to focus on a bigger picture than sort of my immediate parochial interests or those that my constituents might be expressing. So I believe that there are usually good arguments on all sides of an issue, and that I best serve Marylanders and folks of Howard County and Baltimore County if I can help figure out, I guess, what you would call the sweet spot, where the goals are met, but we can balance out other folks' reasons for thinking this isn't a great idea, and find where the common interest is. And I was actually having a conversation with someone yesterday, and they were saying, well, there has to be compromise. And I said, well, sometimes it's not really compromise. You're just looking for how do you define what might be considered disparate goals, and how can we achieve both goals, or where can we give? And I'm not sure. Compromise to me often implies that everybody has to settle for less. And I think that when you're really talking about negotiating in good faith and recognizing that everybody's position is valuable, that what you often end up with is something where everybody gets more than they thought they would get. So as as you point, as a small business owner, it's important to me that my business be successful, but it's also important to me that my employees get the things that they need to be successful. It's important to me that my patients, get what they need, and that, if it's an insurance case, that the insurance is going to cover, there are just multiple aspects that you have to think about all the time if you're being responsible in your job. And it's not a matter of, things have to be the way I want them to be, or my, for instance, let's just say I have to get maximal salary, right? Sometimes my salary is not going to be maximal, but it's going to lead to, better success overall for the other interests, the patients, the employees, the, other folks that have something to offer and have a stake in the game. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but I think that that's an important approach to legislation. And I think that for me, it comes from my experience as a physician and as a small business person to really look at things from a more of a, a 10,000 foot perspective, and a little bit less in the details about what's bothering you that raised the legislative issue in the first place. So there's an initial reason that you're looking at a bill, and then there are the ramifications of the changes that you're considering making.
No, it does. It's a very, growing the pie approach, as opposed to, I'm going to get my slice of the pie, right? And, there's not enough left over for anyone else.
Right. That's a much better way of saying what I took way too many sentences to express.
Not at all.
No, and that's a great point. And so something else that I want to just shift to for a few moments. So obviously, I think for those that have listened in and that know you, if you haven't figured it out, that there's certainly some things that the delegate has passions for. One you could certainly say would be environmental sensitivity and issues. Certainly another would be public health. But another is education. And so I know, Delegate, you've introduced or either been maybe co-sponsor in some legislation related to how our state funding is for our community colleges. And so if you would maybe share a little bit about that, and because obviously, we recognize here in Howard County, I think we would say we have a gym in Howard Community College, and certainly always wanting to do what we can to support that institution. And then certainly I know that there are a couple of other community colleges in your district as well. So if you could speak a little bit about the community college and the funding legislation that you're championing there.
Sure. So you're absolutely right. I mean, those of us who represent District 12, so again, Senator Lamb, Delegates Eric Ebersole, and Jessica Feldmark, are really, really pleased that we have within our district, Howard County Community College, Baltimore County Community College, and UMBC, and or the Community College of Baltimore County and UMBC. I mean, we're just really proud of that. They're all outstanding institutions, and we really want to support them in every way that we can. So Delegate Feldmark actually had legislation that she introduced last year, and I was happy to co-sponsor, which is designed to get the funding formula for our community colleges back on track. So there's a CADE formula, which determines that community colleges are supposed to get a percentage of the funding dollars that are allocated or appropriated to our four-year institutions. That number is then used to calculate what the community colleges are supposed to get. And then that is divided up amongst them using some other formulas. And for a number of years now, probably even from the beginning, the calculation has been misapplied. And so the community colleges have been underfunded. And it's been additive because the base from the previous year is used to determine what this current year's funding is. And so she introduced legislation that did not make it through last year, and we're hoping we'll get through this year, that will correct that and bring the community colleges back to where they were intended to be at this point when the CADE formula was first introduced.
Oops. I just noticed I was talking with my mic muted. But as we near our time to wrap up, and also to be respectful of your morning schedule, want to just, I guess, maybe leave you with a couple of minutes to, if there's anything you'd like to share with the audience that maybe we didn't ask, that you were perhaps looking to discuss, but want to just give you that opportunity before we get ready to wrap up here.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you all again. With the snow outside and the change in weather, the pandemic, it's just been a really challenging time for all of us. And we in the General Assembly are like everybody else, trying to figure out how to do the most good in changing times. A lot of balls in the air, and we're, really trying to just take care of the needs that we've had for years pre-pandemic, the goals that we've had, and then make those adjustments so we can do better. And we know that there are going to be some, again, long-term ramifications from the pandemic, whether it's, figuring out how to get through this year-long gap in our kids' education, right? Keeping businesses going. But I also think it's a real opportunity for us to re-envision who and what we want to be, and to get a restart. Sometimes, when you start from a clean palette, you get a much better opportunity to shape the future. And so I think there's definitely a look at how we can do that. So I appreciate being here. I remain available if people have ideas or thoughts or concerns or are angry at something that I'm doing. I know you'll share the email access with your members and participants. And so I look forward to hearing from folks, and they're welcome to go onto the website, mgaledge.maryland.gov. Look at the bills that I'm offering. Again, there are 20 odd bills, everything from giving homeowners more autonomy from their homeowners association in terms of landscaping, to trying to make sure that accommodations at voting sites are publicized at the time of voting, so that people who arrive know what kind of accommodations they're able to ask for, to many of the bills that we just discussed. So thank you again, and hope you guys stay safe and warm.
Thank you. And Josh, anything you'd like to leave us with? Any comments?
No, thank you, Delegate Hill. It's always a pleasure, and be safe and be well as well.
And so as I wrap this up, again, I want to thank Josh and Delegate Hill for joining me this morning. And also want to remind just our viewers of a few things upcoming with the Chamber. The first is this week on Wednesday, we will host County Executive Dr. Calvin Ball for the annual State of Business Address. It will be in a virtual format, but it will be informative nonetheless. And so that's 11 a.m. and details are on the Chamber website. Also, upcoming Policy Matters segment will feature next Monday. We will have with us Delegate Courtney Watson. And then the following Monday, we will have with us Senator Guy Gazzone. And so stay tuned for that and as well. And again, thank you for your continued support. And again, it's been echoed, stay safe and continue to wear your mask and wash your hands and all of the other things that our public health experts continue to remind us to do. Again, thank you and have a great day.